Would you be willing to say something about the sacrifice of Jesus Christ? And if it's not too much, how what you have to say might relate to René Girard's scapegoat?
Well, I would not start to discuss René Girard. I have a great admiration for the hypothesis of the mimetic crisis, which is a very strong argument. I'm not convinced when this is applied too boldly to say the scapegoat and things like that. But let us just consider about sacrifice of Christ. Indeed, it is a very long and deep issue. Is the death and resurrection of Christ a sacrifice? In what extent? Right. So before asking us that question, we should start by giving a clear definition of what we mean by sacrifice, because all this discussion is marred and, to my opinion, very confused by the fact that there is no clear concept of what a sacrifice is. In many texts claiming that the New Testament should be understood as a sacrifice of Christ for our redemption, what is behind is just a contract. And so you can have the most embarrassing understanding of that contract in Bourdaloue, Malebranche, and other people. So the very question of the sacrifice of Christ appears time to time like groundless, because we don't know what sacrifice means. So people are arguing one against the other with no precise concept of sacrifice. This is the case of a meaningless discussion. There are some in theology. So what could we see? Could we say about the sacrifice of Christ in the New Testament? At least something is clear. It is about the phenomenality of the God. And the key point is that the recognition of Christ as the Son of God, that is in fact the recognition of manifestation of the Father, start when Christ dies. The moment when Christ dies, you have the centurion saying, this man was really the Son of God. This is a theophany. And it is not a theophany sub contrario, theologia crucis versus theologia gloriae. In fact, it is the same thing. The fact that Christ dies means that it is clear that he was not behaving in his own name, he was behaving as sent by the Father, and the very moment of his death is a manifestation of the Father. This is, strictly speaking, a phenomenology of the gift, by excellence. So, indeed, I could follow up this line. That is, it is the fact that Christ is always saying, what I say is not myself. I do nothing but the will of another. That is, this kenosis, which is not a moment, but his way of life. A moment in his life, but his way of life any time. That is, it is not me, it is the Father. That status of being sent and to claim to be sent. This is, and so it is. So you see, for instance, the question of how far Jesus was conscious, self-conscious to be the Son of God. That question is very strange. What does that mean, self-consciousness? In that case, self-consciousness of being the Son of God means that I am not myself. I am not by myself. Exactly the reverse of the usual understanding of self-consciousness, which is I think myself. In the case of Jesus, he is the one who may claim to be the Son of God precisely because he does not think by himself. So we have a reverse concept of self-consciousness. So it makes sense with my understanding of sacrifice, which is just to put yourself aside, to bracket yourself, to make visible the process, the apostolical process of being sent. And so it is precisely because the more Jesus does not claim anything for himself, even the self-consciousness of being the Son of God, this is precisely this that makes him the Son of God. So I think there is a possible reading, so to speak, the death of Christ making not God dead, but the Father visible. That's the paradox. And there is something very superficial in many discussions about those things, because one assume from the beginning the usual concept of sacrifice, the usual concept of self-consciousness and things like that, which makes no sense.
I'll try my best with this. So, as I understand the phenomenology of the gift, it's developed as a way of, as you and Derrida develop, it's a way of escaping the economy of exchange or reciprocity. Mm-hmm. And if God tells me that I have to sacrifice, as he does, and he's not telling me that I'm giving him an object back, but he's telling me that I'm acknowledging what I already have as being a gift from him. Isn't that not, I mean, insofar as he's demanding acknowledgement of what is already given as a gift, is that a demand likened to a kind of reciprocal relation? That is to say, the gift is not freely understood or taken as a gift until, in sacrificing it back, I recognize that it has come from somewhere else. So that is to say, is there a tension between the ultimate freedom of the gift, that is to say that it does not have to be recognized as such, and the notion that only through sacrifice am I acknowledging the giver of it, if that makes any sense?
You would say, in that case, you re-establish a reciprocity, or something like that. It would surely have asked that question. So, it is not. It is like in the erotic phenomenon, where when the question is asked, is there, when it works well, is there a reciprocity? I would not say that there is something like a reciprocity. There is the fact that when the gift, the process of giving, is achieved another way back, again. But it is not a reciprocity. First, because nothing is given back. It is the interpretation of the gift as given, which is at stake in sacrifice after all. So nothing is given back. Unless you think that the recognition, the fact that the giver may appear again, could be seen as a reciprocation. But here there is a point about what reciprocation means. Because in the case of Derrida, as in many other cases, there is such a wide use of reciprocation. That is, for instance, for Derrida, we can put on the same line a gift which is something real and the gift which is something symbolical. We could perhaps say that, but you have to establish that. There is no, to my knowledge, he has never justified this equivalence, which I will admit, by the way. But the fact that the lover loves without reason, and maybe, in the contrary, in the opposite direction, be loved without reasons from the other side. This does not imply that there is an exchange or reason in common. That means that on both sides there is love without reason. And in the case of sacrifice, the fact that the gift has to be at any moment reduced to be seen as a gift, I would say the same thing could be done on the side of the giver as well. I suggest that. To forgive. To forgive is to give again the gift as given. When you forgive, you forgive to the givee the fact that the givee has not kept the gift as given. You don't give it a second time. You give it up for good. So the same operation than sacrifice can be imagined from the point of view of the giver as well. So I'm not certain that those two operations, sacrifice, forgiveness, could be identified to the point that it may become a